Robert Greene is a best-selling author, technically in the self-help genre, but his books read more like classics. He explores timeless dynamics of the human experience, and he often shows us how these themes play out for some of the most powerful figures in history. Today we turn the tables and listen to the speaking voice of Robert Greene. Welcome to Read the Room. I'm Mary Falkenstern. Let's begin.
But you know what you can't fake? It's your voice.
Greene has a new book coming out this fall. It's called The Law of the Sublime. And I was recently listening to him talk about it, and then I had this vivid memory of the first time I ever heard him talk. And I wanted to start with that. So this is a clip from a talk that Robert Greene gave to Google in 2013.
Creativity is not a function of some freakish genetic wiring that occurs in the brains of a few people. It is instead the function of awakening and exploiting the natural creative energy we all possess. Second, I want to show you what prevents many of us from taking this path towards greater creative energy, how we block and inhibit ourselves.
I don't know what I expected him to look or sound like, but it wasn't this. And I'll always remember it because at the time I was 29 years old. I was in what he would call the apprenticeship phase of my career. I was working at an executive coaching firm in Manhattan, learning everything the business world could teach me about executive presence. He is not fitting that mold. His vocal presence is coming from his throat. Physically, his weight is shifting a lot. His eyes are scanning. He touches his face a bunch. And yet it works. He seems genuine. Like he's coming across refreshingly human. And I remember feeling liberated. Like these rules aren't real. You don't have to stand or speak a certain way to have a presence that can influence and move people. But I also remember thinking, this is not a good talk. And the problem is nothing to do with his nonverbal communication. It's that he's speaking like he writes. On paper, these words read beautifully. Spoken, they're dense. They're kind of hard to follow. He doesn't talk like this on interviews. He makes simple, effective choices that allow him to translate complex ideas when he speaks. So I wanted to look at what is he doing differently between how he writes and how he speaks.
I've decided to enter the self-help genre with trepidation because I think it's full of a lot of bullshit.
Well, here's some data. His books read at approximately a 10th to 12th grade level. That Google talk that we just heard a bit of, the same. When he speaks on interviews, it's at a 4th to 6th grade level. So he's using simpler language. But simpler language doesn't mean less intelligent vocabulary. He does not compromise the quality of his words. So what is he doing? Well, let's take a listen.
You want to discover what you were meant to, what you have a connection to, what you have a love for. You want to know that you want to feel it inside of you. It's like a feeling. It's not an intellectual thing. You feel when you're doing sports that it's good. It's a natural thing. It's what I'm meant for. When you're involved with words like I was when I was 8 years old, it felt right. It felt like a natural fit. I have to follow this path.
The biggest shift that I see between Robert Greene, the writer, and Robert Greene, the speaker, is pacing. Pacing is important for both writing and speaking, but it works differently in each medium. When we're writing, there are visual markers that organize meaning, right? We have punctuation, we have capital letters, paragraph breaks, and literally as readers, we can pace ourselves. We can read at our own pace. Speaking is different. We don't have punctuation, we have pauses, we don't have italics, we have emphasis, we don't have paragraph breaks. We use changes in rhythm and energy. In other words, when we're speaking, we create the structure with our voice. And this is what Robert Greene is doing so well in interviews. In particular, he does a few things that we can listen for. His rate of speech is measured. He's not too fast, but he's also not too slow. More importantly, he speaks in shorter thoughts. So he makes a short point and he pauses, and then you'll hear that he repeats key ideas a few times to verbally reinforce them.
Power is a feeling. It's an essence. It's an emotion. It's a human need and desire. The feeling of powerlessness is actually more corrupting than the feeling of having a lot of power.
So he paces the delivery to keep us with him. But what makes him a speaker worth listening to is that he's saying things that are worth our time. And that's where the quality of his writing comes in, because the underlying source of great speaking and great writing is the same. They both come from quality thinking.
Opening the lens, considering other possibilities, is what makes somebody creative.
At this point, we need to talk about Robert Greene's research and writing process. He's very well known for it. He reads over 100 books for every one that he writes, rigorously annotates, then transfers his notes onto countless flashcards. His last book, he wrote entirely by hand and through transcription because in 2018, he had a stroke that left him unable to type. Pretty remarkable. But what makes Greene's work relevant isn't how he takes notes, it's how he thinks. And he has a process for how he thinks through his material that I find very useful for speaking. He shares it here.
When I'm writing a book, I'm obviously very anxious about it and I feel very concerned, but I make myself go through this process, which is very kind of relaxes me and calms me down, where I take all of the material that I have and I try and organize it and see what the whole picture is about. And then I kind of expand the lens and I go, what is it that I'm not thinking about? What is it that I haven't considered? What is that direction in this particular idea that I have not looked into? Opening the lens, considering other possibilities, is what makes somebody creative.
So he's speaking about this as a writer, but it's a brilliant process for speaking preparation. He gets his own ideas out clearly. He sees his own perspective, but then he looks at it from as many angles as he can. And he says that he forces himself to do it. He makes himself see his own ideas from different perspectives. And what I also find really interesting is that he says it relaxes him. And what I think he means by that is it gets him out of his own head. And what I guess I relate to that because when I'm in my own head, I tend to get compulsive and very fixated. So actually by zooming out, like pulling the aperture out and seeing different angles, it is calming. And I think what he shares here is one of the core reasons why he's a great conversationalist, because before he's even entered a room, before you've read any of his books, he's already in conversation. He's in conversation with the books he reads. He's in conversation with his own work. Okay, so to end, I was going to close out with Robert Greene sharing this inspiring story from his latest book. But then last night I was brushing my teeth and all of a sudden I get this song in my head and I start humming. And I'm like, why do I have an inappropriate Lil' Kim song in my head right now? And then I was like, oh, it features 50 Cent. They wrote a book together, but it was like my subconscious mind was telling me not to end this episode with a little bow and make it perfect, because that's exactly, I think, why he thinks self-help is bullshit. Learning is not perfect. I started this episode with the Michelangelo quote, I am still learning. It's the simplest, most direct way that I could get to the essence of Robert Greene. So I thought it would be fitting to end with him sharing what he learned from his work with 50 Cent. Until next time.
And so what I learned from him and being around him is I always thought that I was a pretty fearless person, you know? When I was young, I did things that I would never do now. I was incredibly adventurous. But compared to 50, I saw that I was actually a very fearful person. I had a lot of anxieties. I was worried about what other people thought about me. I was trying to be very agreeable and nice and pleasant to get along with them. And I realized you don't need to do that, Robert. You can be more abrasive sometimes. You don't have to worry about constantly pleasing people. In fact, sometimes you can deliberately displease people. Who cares, you know? If you don't like me, if you're not on my vibe, if you don't respect my books, you know, geh gesund, as we say in Yiddish. Go away, I don't care. That's your thing, right? So being bolder, not caring about what people think about you, is probably the most important lesson I carried away from 50.